There we go.
There we go.
We got the little square there.
Right.
And we're filming today. We got the red counter up there. And I think this is how we'll get into today's video with a special guest down here. And I want to remind my audience that right here you can see we're on YouTube now, and with videos, which this one I'll probably post if my guest today and I agree that it's postable. I think it will be, because I just met him yesterday.
That's true.
And some of the notes I made this morning thinking about Mark. I want to introduce Mark. Mark, welcome to Doug's Interesting People.
This is awesome to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And Mark comes from, I used to tell my office assistant, who's still there in the business that I sold, my wife and I, a wonderful little Jewish girl, I call her little because she was kind of short, from Brooklyn, who's still there after many, many years. But I used to go out to Indiana, Mark, to Lake Wawasee.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, up north for the SAE Pledge Class reunion. And it expanded to other brothers in the fraternity. And whenever I would go out there, I would tell her, I'll see you in a few days. I'm going to go to Indiana, Nina from Brooklyn, because that's where normal people live. And we would always get a chuckle out of that. Yeah, so who knows. Anyway, this morning, after I'd talked to you yesterday, we were, I think, kind of discussing that we want to run through the regular interview first, so a short bio. But we've determined, I think, that we were both kind of different and outside the box.
Yes, definitely.
And I think you'd agree with that.
I would.
Okay. Maybe even thought to be at some points in our life a little weird.
Weird comes to mind.
Does that come to mind too?
Yeah, I looked up the word weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a connotation of being not only different, but very unusual.
Oh.
There's the word kind of like adds to exceptionally unusual.
Ooh, I like that.
I know. So
and
yeah,
in
I
our
don't know about the exceptional, but very comes into mind. Very unusual.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I started off in the system after college, and this isn't going to work for me. And
so there's two ideas
what did
about,
you think?
well, two ideas about being out of the box. There's kind of the idea that out of the box means you're kind of like into a iconoclastic place. I call it the Archimedean point, that's outside the world. Okay. Or you can consider it to where you've expanded your box to where your box got inclusive, if you will. So you work to kind of enlarge the box.
Yes.
So I think there's a combination of both kind of concepts. And one is where you're totally outside.
Okay.
And so we want to call it the bureaucracy box that everybody tries to put you in.
System,
the
swamp,
systems,
whatever.
You're outside of that in your own little area, and you create another box. And that's something I think you did. You create your own new box.
That's a good thought.
Or I know sometimes I was trying to say, how can we expand the box I'm in to where it's a new box? Yeah. So you get outside of it, but trying to do it in a way that expands the box. So that's another thought.
So
that makes you unusual.
So then they don't think you're weird when you describe it that way, because the outside the box thinking, not many people have that skill or ability, really, and then to act on it.
Because that's uncomfortable. It's a place of uncomfortability because you're not inclusive necessarily.
Yes.
And sometimes you get repudiated, and it's painful. So you have to be willing to understand the pain.
Yeah.
But they say pain you gain, whatever. It's the idea that you get stretched when it's uncomfortable. And a lot of people say,
I don't want
But-
to get stretched. I don't like change.
Yeah.
That's what most people
But
say. I
the
think.
Musk's of the world will say, like, if you don't
Yeah.
stay in a point of uncomfortability, you don't make change.
Yes, yes,
So-
and goodness knows, you live in this world. You live in a world of change. And
Yeah, hopefully for the good. That's the whole point.
good. As I said, I just met Mark yesterday.
Mhm.
Mark studied law as his profession, and still does some of that, but a lot of entrepreneurial stuff too.
Yeah.
And he's a Quaker, and I'm a Midwestern Protestant type, and so we have good discussions about our religious beliefs and so forth. And I hope maybe we can get some stories from him.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with legal pads. You keep a legal pad handy for, you could label the top of it Doug's future interviews, and record them on your voice memo, and we'll connect by messenger perhaps. As people know, I've got lots of ideas, but I need a lot of help to get them off the ground.
Amen.
Tell us about, I'm kind of into, I know you got wonderful stories of fathers and grandfathers and
Yeah.
a ton of them, and I would love to hear those. But Gail and I, my wife, owned and operated a small family business.
Right.
And I know among other legal consultancies that you do, you've got some family businesses.
Correct.
And so can you just describe who's involved with you and what the various people do and so forth? And
Yeah.
maybe after that, we could talk a little bit about what COVID did. So if you could start out with the basic things that you do and the family involved and how you got that rolling.
So, I sold a business, and out of the payment of the business, I got involved with my son and daughter-in-law, and my basically the whole family involvement in buying a campground.
Okay.
It started out as a campground, and
located where?
It's in Bloomington, Indiana, where my son and later my other daughters, 2 daughters, all lived in Bloomington.
Yeah.
So originally I bought it, I was living in Indianapolis. We moved back to Bloomington.
Okay.
But the story is that I got involved with realizing that the campground was a real loser. Unless it got remodeled, it had to be massively remodeled.
How long did it take you to kind of see that coming?
So I purchased
Did you miss some due diligence at some point?
Yeah. It was stupid. How long did it take to be unstupid?
That's part of entrepreneurship.
Oh my gosh!
Isn't
So
it? Go
we
ahead.
bought it. It sounds like the perfect thing. It always sounds perfect. So I've got a large house that somebody was leasing, and that amount of that rental money was going to pay for the deal, just renting this house. So that seemed like the campground basically was going to be free from all that. They had another little building. Within literally like 2 weeks of buying the thing, there's a real spat between the people living there. The husband leaves. The wife, is in a mess, so she takes her 2 kids. Anyway, the place is abandoned, kind of in a wreck. And so I'm sitting there with my son saying, "Oh my gosh, this thing is now, it's going to kill us."
Yeah.
So we got
Was he an IU graduate? Indiana University.
He and his wife were both IU graduates. Remember, all my kids were IU graduates.
Okay.
So there I am, left in this dilemma with what to do about the business, if you will. It was just going to be a rental. My son wanted to be a camp manager.
Operator.
Yeah. He wanted to manage a campground.
Okay.
He thought this was the perfect little
Yes.
scenario. How it was only like a few miles from his home, so he thought it was the perfect thing. You know,
Yeah.
your son could manage it.
Yeah.
You know, you have a rental that would pay for it.
Okay.
Anyway, that all blew up.
Okay.
So now you've got a fairly decent sized mortgage payment. There's no rent, and
Okay.
so you look at how can I remodel it and kind of make it rentable. I'm into the dumps and talking to a friend like, man, this thing's so underwater. I'm so messed up. And then he said, have you looked out the door? I said, well, there's nothing but weeds right now. He says, yeah, but beyond the weeds, there's this look, this view that's priceless. He said, you have got a lodge here. You've got a business that can, but you got to fix it up. Well, if you can do that, you've got this terrific site.
Yes.
And I looked at it like, well, that has possibilities.
Yeah.
But at the time, you couldn't even see anything because there was like weeds 4 foot high. And the place was been so misused and abused.
Okay.
Anyway, so I told my son, if we can get this thing working again, I mean, we can make it. So we go out and get a bid on just making it like a bathroom.
Okay.
The price of the bathroom was my entire budget. So I told another meeting, I told my son, like, hey, we're even worse shape here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that was 2007/8. Okay, this is a great story. So he and my son walk out. I'm kind of diverting here, but it's relevant.
Yeah, that's what we're
And we
here
see
for.
about 10 guys,
Yeah.
and it's about 9 o'clock in the morning. They've got about 4 cases of beer.
Okay.
And we
4
walk over and
cases
say,
of
like,
beer,
hey,
10
this is
guys.
not, he said, guys, it's not
It's a
o'clock,
winning
we got 40.
combination.
And I tell the guys, hey, can we help you out?
Yeah.
They said, yeah, well, we all lost our job today.
Oh, geez.
We're all contractors,
Yeah.
and this subdivision went under, so we're all out of the jobs. So no one wants to go home and tell our wives we're unemployed.
Yep.
So the best thing is get drunk. We all had beer.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, it's funny because today I looked at our place that that we need to remodel, and we can't afford it.
Okay.
But maybe you guys could help us. Anyway, so they said, well, we're employed, we're available. I said, well, I got to figure it out. Maybe I can afford to pay $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And all these guys said, well, I was making 30 or 40.
Yeah. Okay.
I said, hey, $10 an hour, but cash on Friday.
There you go.
And one guy spoke up and said, hey, you know what? I'm not going back to my wife and tell them I'm unemployed. $10 on yours. And with that, I got 10 guys. They were all artisan tradesmen.
Yes.
Everything you can imagine. And we saved lives from a standpoint that they all came to work, and then pretty soon the Royals all came to work. And we remodeled this building. We tore it down, gutted it, remodeled it. It was gorgeous. It took us 6 months to do this, but inside of 6 months.
So how many guys were with you through that?
Yeah, there's at least 10, or ultimately about
No
15
kidding.
people.
And they were like locals from southern Indiana.
And all live in the hills.
Okay.
We're basically tradesmen.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so they remodeled this and turned around this whole facility. And we kept families together during a difficult time. And sometimes they didn't quite have enough money, and that was fine. We'd have chili dinners instead.
Yeah.
And we got through it. So anyway, to make your long story short, we became a family enterprise supported by the community enterprises and families.
Yes.
And we built a business around helping community and around families. That was it.
When you say it was a campground when you got it,
Yeah.
is that one of the kind of campgrounds where people would bring RVs or travel trailers, and so you had areas
Right. You have
with utilities, hookups, things of that
and you
nature.
rented it by the season.
Yeah.
And so, when we first got it, they had the places, you had tires and refrigerators and broken down trailers. And so we had to, pull all those out. But I did have some help doing all that. And so I learned, again, I practiced law. We had a steel erection business I did for about 10 years. That's what I sold and got out of.
Okay.
But everything was all family related.
Yeah.
My son worked for our steel company.
Yes.
And then he wanted to get out of that and wanted to just be in construction, or he liked remodeling and building things.
Yes.
So this was the perfect. This was endless. remodeling
hear you.
and making things in the
Yeah.
resort business is endless.
I sold, Gail and I sold our business to an employee and his family. And the employee sounds a lot like your son because other people do teacher relations and scheduling and swimming lessons and that. And he loves operations and remodeling.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's done wonderfully.
Yeah.
So I can understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
my son and his wife,
Yeah.
they love being outdoors. They got their degree in outdoor management,
Oh,
recreational
right.
management.
From Indiana,
Mhm,
too? She
yeah.
was from.
Yeah,
But
they
did
both
he
in the
meet
same
her in
class.
college?
Well, yes and no. They went.
Yeah.
They went ultimately to the same school and
Yeah.
did programs together. But he met her just happenstantially
Yeah.
in town, and they just kind of connected. But
Okay.
she's the daughter of my ex-law partner.
Oh.
We had our firm together.
Yeah.
Then he went on his own,
Yeah.
and we had during we were practicing together. We had all our family reunions and all the people in the firm came together.
Yes.
The family had a
Yes.
picnic, and so they grew up for years coming to their family reunions and our firm picnics.
Yes.
But didn't know that when they saw each other. They didn't know that they had all this family connection.
Yes.
And then finally, my son asked. He said, "Jenny, does your dad happen to be like?" Her name was Babcock, Jim Babcock. Oh yeah, that's my dad. He says, "My gosh, that's my dad's. Our dads were partners together."
Get out.
Yeah. So
Where
that
was your
connection.
law firm when you were doing that?
Yeah, we were right downtown, and we ended up being
Downtown Indianapolis?
Indianapolis, right?
Okay.
In the heart of the town.
And folks, again, Indiana's where the normal people live. But if you look on a map, Indianapolis is kind of right in the center of the state.
Yeah, actually in the middle. That's right.
And it is one of my favorite, wonderful cities. That, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. Just a side, but go ahead.
Well,
yeah,
that's really another story how that
yeah.
evolved.
Yeah.
But so you were asking about how family businesses evolve.
Yes.
Because business evolves, and you have to adapt to all the different changes going on. Whether it's the pandemic, huge, changes.
Yeah, we'll have a little section when we get to that.
And
so
how you start out, how you evolve, then you have these little crises, whatever they are. There's something comes along.
Always crises.
Yeah, something happens.
Yep.
A lawsuit issue, or you got a government issue, or whatever. Something happens with us. It was a pandemic. Because we have. I mentioned the lodge remodel, but then we changed and we remodeled back.
So what is the form physically of the types of businesses that you do today on this site?
All right, so you've got the campground. There is a 50-lot campground. Then you've got a lodge. They did the remodeling, and then we went over and remodeled a building, made it into like a destination restaurant. So it's called the Scenic View.
Yeah.
Look it up, Scenic View Restaurant.
Yes, my wife's been there a number of times. Yeah.
So there's this little restaurant, which Jenny Bell, son's wife, she runs the restaurant. He kind of runs the campground. They both kind of do this lodge.
Yes.
So it has kind of which is needed because they all have seasons. So in a resort area, we overlook the lake of Monroe. And
so they're all nicely responsible for their designated area.
Exactly.
And they don't, and they stay out of it. Let the final decision anyway be the person who that's their area. That's the way we always did it. But go ahead.
No, that's exactly right.
Yes.
But you articulated it better than I had thought.
I didn't go to law school. I barely, and people know this.
You articulated.
I dropped out of an MBA program, but that's another.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. So is her name Jenny, did you say?
Jenny Bell.
Okay. I guess that kind of takes us, I'll speed it up a little bit here, to with those businesses and the onset of the pandemic, Yeah. I had sold Gail and I had sold our place to employees before that.
So
But you had to deal with it.
yeah.
So how did that change
Oof.
everything?
It changed everything.
Yeah.
See, when you shut something down, it can't be restored just like it was. I say
Yeah.
can't. I say my experience is it didn't
Yes.
work. So when they shut us down,
They
the
being
government said you have to shut down your restaurants.
So okay.
Or
the
any-
feds.
or
The feds
basically-
said that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
and it
okay.
meant that your local health department said
Yes. Health
cease
department?
operations. It wasn't like
Okay.
slow down, do whatever. It was cease operations
Yeah.
on March 16th, 2020. So out of business, you shutter the
Nothing. You couldn't do any of
No,
those things
no.
that you were set up for.
right, and that went all the way
Wow.
until September of 2020.
Yeah.
So when you shut the doors, and it was so insidious from the standpoint, they did it on March 16th, the day before St. Patty's Day. I mentioned this to you. So
Yeah.
so
No, go ahead.
no
I love it.
pre-warning. So what you do is, of
Yeah.
course, St. Patty's Day, you're all geared. You've got your Irish stew. You've got whatever, everything, all the things ready for this main
Yeah.
leap year day. So
One of your
then you shut-
seasonal things. It's a good day in a private business to make
Right.
some profit.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you shut down.
Yeah.
You eat Irish stew for 6 months, and but they finally said, "Hey, we know we're sending particularly restaurant and
Yeah.
whole what do you call it, the whole industry, hotels, whatever, were
Yes.
shuttered. So we'll help you out." And they have this thing called a PPP, which is
What'd that stand for?
mm,
Doesn't matter, but
yeah, it's an acronym for sure.
they do it through the banks
You went to the bank, you made your application through a bank. They
for
if you
the
want money,
federal money.
right?
Okay.
And they submitted to the SBA,
Okay.
and the money came through and just dropped into your account. Whatever they
Yes.
approved, you had to, they did a formula, all of which was whatever. You never knew exactly how they were devised it,
Right.
but money did come through and
Yeah.
dropped in your account.
And
But you had to
real
spend
quickly, my opinion when I look back on it is big government that I rail against, and I always did until this pandemic thing, because the shoveling of money, I don't think they really knew or could agree what to do, but they had to do something.
Yeah,
And in a broad brush, that's what I look back on. But go ahead.
well, initially, of course, like anything else, starts out with good intent. I mean,
Yes.
I don't question at all the intent. Like you needed to do something.
You had to do
had an
something.
epidemic, so obviously
Yes.
you just couldn't ignore it. Of course.
Oh, yes.
So you shut
So
things
you bring
down,
science in.
and you say, "Hey,
Yeah.
for a couple of weeks, we're going to slow this down." But
Okay.
then it went on.
Yeah, I
and on,
remembered.
and
They
like,
were only saying a couple weeks.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, don't worry, it's just a couple of weeks, we're going to shut it down. That,
Yeah.
well, not so sure. It's still so. Whether it was like we had to have tens of thousands of beds available with treatment centers, which although I never got all that used, but we created
Right.
these centers. Everybody had to go
Yes.
be tested.
Yes.
And you couldn't have anything else if you weren't tested. You have to have a certification of your tests, all that.
Yeah.
Then they later did it with same thing with vaccines. You had to have a certification of vaccines.
Yes.
So the regulation just like went into the matrix of everything you did. It was like you couldn't have meetings, whether it was churches,
Yes.
and and then probably like some common sense started, kind of filtering in. Like, wait a minute,
Yes.
we've been going
How
on
long
this now
did
for
it
2 weeks.
take
Well,
from when they shut you down
so
till you felt like some common sense was getting into the equation?
well, I know. I'll put it this way: I got a sense of common sense.
You always
Early
had
on.
it, of
Yeah, I was
course.
gonna say this is not
Yeah.
making sense to me.
Yes.
Like, why is it 6 feet when really, if you cough, you could go 20 feet?
Yeah.
Or really, if you're just breathing, it wouldn't take 6 feet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if someone, and why are we saying you have to wear a mask, but you can eat? So you have
Yes.
to remove the mask.
Yeah.
So like all these things didn't add up to where 2 and 2 equaled 4. It was like
Was
it
this
was the,
maybe like 10 months, a year
oh
after it
no
started?
no. I mean, I got the sense like
Yeah.
this is beyond reach of common sense, like within a couple of months. Within,
Ah,
but
okay.
and remember, money started coming in like in May. They cut you
Yeah.
off in March. By May, they were starting to help you get some money to kind of pay for
Okay.
your employees. So they didn't want everybody to go out at
And
employment.
that was based on your employments,
Right.
people you employed, and salaries.
Right.
Now, a question. Uh, I remember, I had gross salaries that are
Mm-hmm.
hourly rates and some salaried people, and
Right.
how that was reduced to net pay to my people.
Right.
Uh, what did government give you? And what was their taxation at that point on that money? Or
Well, they initially it was going to be taxed, and they passed a
Yeah.
law saying it wasn't. That it was not going to be taxed. So
Okay.
ultimately, the PPP money was
Yeah.
not ultimately determined not to be taxed.
Oh,
That was later
okay.
on that they decided not to do it because they realized they're going to give it to
Yeah.
you and then tax you
Did
for
they
it.
start? But they started with taxing it. Do you
Well,
remember?
remember
Well,
they
you would
saw it
remember.
evolve. First, they
Yeah.
got you the money out the door.
Yeah.
People like, you're getting water in a desert, so everybody just absorbed the money.
Yes.
But remember, there was conditions. You had to use it for personnel. You had to use it for employment. You had to give it
Yes.
to employees. Or then they said, well, also mortgage interest.
Oh, they
Uh,
expanded
They
that.
expanded it, and utilities. They let you pay
Oh.
for utilities. So it was,
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
other things than just employment.
Yeah.
But 90%, the whole purpose was to help with employees. So
Got
they
it.
didn't,
Keep
so
people
everybody wasn't
working.
on the unemployment rolls.
Yes.
So you did use it for that.
Yeah.
Then they said, well, also, by the way, we're going to not tax it because that's a penalty. 'Cause
Yeah.
You didn't have money to pay the tax. If you used it for employees, now the money's gone. If you insert a tax,
Yes.
everybody be, in delinquencies.
A little disappointed too
So,
that this
yeah,
all this
so they
aggravation
changed
was
that.
going
They
on.
they
and less
realized
money.
they're
Yeah, I
adding
hear
that.
you.
But in answer to your question is like, how did it evolve? And is it common sense started to tell like, here's a common sense. I'm
Yes.
at an IU basketball game.
Yes.
17,000 the place is packed. 17,000 people there,
Yes.
and maybe a few dozen people were wearing masks at that time.
Ah. Okay.
So this would be like December, whatever.
Yeah. And
But
a
I'm
quick.
telling you, so
Yeah.
there's
Go
a
ahead,
lady
go
right
ahead,
next
go
to
ahead.
me
Yes.
who is wearing a mask,
Yes.
and I'm
Looking
looking.
askance at you.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't have one.
I didn't have one.
The
So
social
in employment, right? I was
sheep.
I wasn't socially distancing
Yes.
because we're right shoulder to shoulder. But there's a guy. This is what I'm saying. So there's a guy walking down the aisle, and he has a
Yes.
sign in the air that says, "Please wear a mask." And there's 17,000 people,
And
almost everybody not wearing masks. But there's a guy walking down. He's holding a sign just like this, carrying it down.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't help myself. I just turned to the lady who was wearing a mask and said, that guy's an idiot.
Boy, what a
And,
lawyer.
so the lady
Yeah.
turned to me. He says, well, I'm a doctor. I do not want to get COVID.
Okay.
And I feel very uncomfortable sitting next to you.
I love it.
I sat there
Yeah.
like, well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I and the other 16,000 people
Yeah.
that most of the people are not wearing masks either. And I noticed the guy that was right behind her turned out to be her husband, and he was funny, screaming and shouting, which is to say he was putting more bacteria in the air or whatever than
Wow, that's
around
a
his
good
wife.
story.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that was insanity we were living
Yeah.
in. You had the people
Yeah.
wearing masks while they're running in the woods. You'd have people wearing masks while they're by
Driving
themselves,
their
driving a
car.
car.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
saying that the world is upside down.
Yeah.
We've gotten
Yeah.
this paranoia.
Sure.
And like the lady said, I'm
Yeah.
afraid. I don't want to get sick.
Yes.
So I think.
How old was she, would you say?
I'd say late 50s.
Okay.
She was smart enough to know better, but afraid. It was the fear factor.
Absolutely.
So thinking like whatever,
Absolutely.
if I'm just helping myself by 1%, that's 1% better than no percent. I suppose
Yeah.
I'm going to wear a mask. And then it
Wow.
got like I'll wear a mask anywhere and everywhere.
What a
there are
nutty
people,
time.
there are people still wearing masks.
Today I see some.
Yeah, you're going like, well, it's held over, but their chances
Yeah.
of getting sick
Yes.
from 1,000 other things is just as much as the
Yes.
COVID. Nevertheless, I'm saying we went through that crazy time.
Yeah.
And the effect on the business was that, well, let me back. I want to regress.
Yes.
One thing that happened in Indiana, which was unique, is that the vice president was Mike Pence,
Yes.
the governor of Indiana, and Trump had made him the person in part of just basically
Oh.
administrating, the overseeing, or
Yeah.
inputting whatever on the COVID issue. He put the
Oh.
vice president basically in charge of trying to deal with COVID on a
Yeah.
daily basis.
Okay.
I mean, they were having almost daily conversations with the governors, and everybody's trying to coordinate something.
Yes.
Well, so then you have Bedoran come out, say, here we've got vaccine, and Johnson's done.
Got it. Yep.
And Pfizer has theirs. So we got 3
Yes.
approved sources of
Wow.
vaccines, right? Well,
Was that
as
under
it
the
turns
Trump
out-
administration? They got
Yeah,
those
well,
quick
oh, yeah,
approvals. I want to
everything-
add that, folks.
yeah.
Under
so
the Trump administration.
They put this,
Yeah.
they gave it a code name, but basically,
Okay.
let's fast track it.
Yes.
And they did a lot of different things to try to make sure that the manufacturers, Pfizer,
Yeah. And you're
Yeah.
not going to be injected something to make things worse in
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Bedoran contracted with the local people in Bloomington. It was a cook who's one of the, he designed, has a patent for stents, he's one of the more wealthy people in
Okay.
Indiana. Cook,
Okay.
to be the contractor for at least producing and bottling Bedoran. So this is a huge government contract. I mean,
Yes.
millions.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, our little town of 70,000 people becomes the source of this worldwide vaccine.
Get out.
So
Yeah.
what happens is when you get government money, you
Yes.
have government input.
Absolutely.
Input being that you have to pay government wages. So what happens in our little town is that everybody goes, and actually I think Cook sold out to another one called Catalent,
Yeah.
which is I don't know if it's...
Is that when the excitement, it's got to be a $15 minimum wage, also all of a sudden became? I don't know.
that
I
versus
connect that with a lot of the stuff that's.
Well, what
Yeah.
happened was they were paying like $35 an hour
Yeah.
plus all. You have to meet all these minimum wage requirements. Anyway, the bottom
Oh.
line is
Yeah.
everybody got sucked up.
Yes.
Into their
Rules.
their manufacturing
Yeah.
process. Everybody going to work
Yeah.
for Catalent and Cook,
Yeah.
who had these huge contracts. Contracts to
Oh.
produce the vaccine. Well, what happened to my little business?
Yeah.
then?
Yeah.
I lost all my cooks. First of all, they
Oh.
weren't able to be there employed, so they went and found employment for this
Yeah.
huge manufacturing process.
Yeah.
But when it got then opened up and said, okay,
Yeah.
now you can
Yeah.
be open up to like
Yeah.
Bing, you're going to be in operation.
How many?
You couldn't find any cooks. You couldn't find them. They're all working
Yes.
for this government operation.
Yes.
So that's what I'm
Yes.
saying. That's a unique thing in Bloomington. Your manpower evaporated.
Yes.
Just overnight, you lost the ability to find your service people.
Yes. Yes. And was that around the time that our southern borders floodgates were open, or
Well, of course, that
was
happened-
that another
Well, remember that just
time
happened
of
immediately.
turmoil?
So it all happens in 2020, right?
Yeah.
The whole turnover to Biden
Yes.
and him just immediately saying anything that's Trump is gone. We're not going to have any whatever program he had, whether it's tariffs,
Yes.
whether it's the
Yes.
open border, the closing the border, anything
Yes.
he did,
Yes.
oil, fracking, all that stuff. Meaning we're going to change this. Basically, everybody brought in was like so anti-Trump
Yes.
that
They went overboard.
well, they based all their decisions
Yeah.
like, well, if Trump did it, then we're not. If
Yeah.
it had forget about any merit to it one way or another. It's irrelevant. If it's Trump, it's gone.
Yes.
So, to our little enterprise, it's like vaccines are in,
Yes.
so everybody has to be vaccinated.
Okay.
Can't even get a government job unless you're vaccinated. You got to prove everybody has a card about their vaccines.
Yeah, I remember that.
Whether it's you mentioned your point about the border, there's no border enforcement, open borders.
Yes.
So, as a matter of fact, actually, I kept thinking, well, maybe to some degree, before it got crazy. I thought, well, maybe some degree
Yeah. I'll
having
get
more
some-
immigrants would be
Yeah,
helpful.
I
Because
agree.
Lord knows I can't
agree.
find any workers.
Yep.
While working for Catlett, I'm signing here dying trying to find a cook.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe an immigrant would come in. No, you couldn't find anybody because they all would find their own little locations.
Yes.
So they'd go to New York, L.A., wherever
Right.
they
Yep,
find their
yep,
own little,
yeah.
their cloister. So if you're an immigrant and you're from
Yeah.
Venezuela, you go where all the Venezuelans are.
Yeah.
If you're from,
Sure.
the Cossacks, you go to wherever your community is. So we went to New York.
Yeah.
Anyway,
didn't
they weren't
come
coming to Bloomington. They weren't coming to Bloomington. That's for sure. So,
So how'd you
Yeah.
solve that?
I haven't solved, to be honest.
Still working on it.
Yeah, what happened?
Worker shortage.
Yes, we are only open. Our restaurant
Yeah.
is only open 3 days a week.
Well, and if you're a clear thinking entrepreneurial type, which you are, you figured out those adjustments that you could make.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of them. And of course, here in southeastern Pennsylvania, I noticed a lot of that kind of going on. My CVS, for example, a lunch break now, and they're closed.
Oh,
So you
that's
can't
interesting.
pick up, and they disseminated that information very well, and it made sense to
it just-
keep workers and work in a restricted operational environment.
Yeah, I get you. I didn't know about CVS, but that's
Yeah.
endemic of how we all finally had to learn
Yeah.
how to live on less.
Yes.
So we adjusted. So, instead of being open at 11, you open at 4.
Yes.
If you're not making money on Mondays and Tuesdays, you drop them. You're not open on
Right.
Monday and Tuesdays. So
Right.
we had another little business of pizzeria.
Yes.
You're open from 11 to 10. Yeah, now
Yeah.
we're open from 4 to 9.
Yeah.
So and on.
Did you guys do delivery in
Oh yeah.
that?
Matter of fact, that's the way
Yeah.
we got through it. Is
You
because of-
started that. You didn't
Yeah.
do it prior, or you
Well, we didn't
dabbled
do it like
in it?
We didn't do it like, and it's all
Yeah.
family. That's another way you survived. All of a sudden, you brought in
Yes.
all your in-laws or anybody that you knew.
Yes.
Friendly. They say,
Yeah.
well, okay, they didn't have to work for Cook and Catlett and the Medoran folks. They, their own enterprise. So they do it.
So you
everybody had to do 2 jobs.
you
There's nothing
rethink where you get your help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
From family and friends,
Yes.
people who were renting from you, anybody that you knew,
Yeah.
they'd be willing to help you out.
Yes.
That's how you did your deliveries. We made it on because people were not going out. They didn't want to
Yeah.
go to restaurants as much. So
Was there a pretty good demand for delivery?
Yeah.
Which helped, and you really hadn't done that as much, I'm guessing,
right, that's right.
before all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you adjust
Yeah.
and you get a lot. But what you adjust to is that
Yeah.
you're not making money like you were before. Where
Yes.
Every year you seem to be going up just a little bit.
Yes.
So you see like
Yes.
like 10 or 15% increase
Yes.
each year. So you're kind of feeling the bell curve going in a
Yes.
positive way. When it drops off, you're
Yes.
basically starting all
They
over
invented
again.
that curve from your family, right?
Yeah.
The bells.
Yeah, the bell curve at the bells. Yeah. So you're right. You start all over again. Now you're starting
Sure.
with base 0. And it's funny. They're all saying, well, we're, Biden administration said we're helping out. We're getting so many more jobs.
Yeah.
Well, that's 100% from 0.
You're right.
So
You're
when you
right.
take everybody down to almost 0, we're getting more hires.
Yeah.
But I get more hires being based on being better than nothing.
Where you used to be.
Exactly.
It's
so,
just reclaiming pay.
right.
Yeah. We know the politics. Yeah. Yeah.
So, we're basically right now
Yeah.
3 days a week,
Okay.
and getting along.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
you just realize, you drop down on insurance, you
Yeah.
drop down on wages.
Yes.
You
And I
drop
think
down,
insurance companies, based on the people Gail and I sold our place to, and he's very sharp, like you and your son. He right away talked to the
That's
insurance
right.
company. Oh yeah,
Ah,
and he's extremely prescient, and he was a phys ed teacher.
yeah.
I would take 1,000,000 of those guys. The phys ed people were the
best.
most wonderful summer camp employees, but I love the winter employees too. But go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well,
Yeah. Where were we?
so you just really
so
touched
where
on
you're
how
back to.
yeah, we're still
Yeah.
trying to get back.
Yeah.
And I don't know where, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you're ever going to get back to where you were. You just have
Okay.
to- it's the new normal.
Yeah.
You just find a way to how to get along on less.
Yes.
So I don't have to make
Did you?
20 or 30%, let's say, profit. I'm living on
Yeah.
4% profit.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And sometimes just breaking even or trying not to lose,
Right.
and
Right.
thinking, I will get back to another level, but I need to now think about maybe how I diversify. How do I do another little business, having
Rethinking
multiple little
the
businesses rather than try to be the
operations.
bigger one I had. So
Yes.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
adapting. So that's the world, but I
Yeah.
think that that's a good thing. Adapting
You're right.
creates
You're right.
strength.
And the people that Gail and I sold the business to, he was brilliant at it. And the PPP money was wonderful,
Yeah.
and he had a lot of payroll. And he kept a lot of good people. But a little bit of having to go out and get people, as opposed to they just used to flow in.
Yeah.
So we
That's right. You
noticed
have
that.
to learn how to recruit.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
it takes. And that's another thing is that, so, we're of a generation, as you know now,
Yeah.
you've got Gen Zs, you've got millennials and so forth. And that's
Yes.
really in the service industry, that's normally where you went to
Sure.
the people who were,
Yeah,
20 to 35.
yeah,
Now you have to learn how to adapt. Let's say, like, the
Yes.
millennials that will tell you, like, it is, money's important.
yes,
We have to have a certain level, but
yes,
how we feel comfortable. We want friendly people. We want to have benefits. We want to have time off. So it's you have to add a dimension
yes,
to keeping your employees of how to keep them happy.
yes.
The way it used to be, you kept
And
them
keep
happy.
family happy.
Yeah, well, that's right. My
As
wife
well,
doesn't want me
which
to
is a
spend
subject
weekends.
for a total other day.
Well, no problem. Is that we in the service business, you work when everybody else is playing, which is
Yes.
to say, like, weekends. That's when they come out and
Yeah.
do the resort work. Well, you have to be feeding people on the weekends. Well, somebody said, "Well, I don't like my husband working on the weekends." Well, gee, that doesn't work for us. He has to work on weekends. Well, then I think you ought to find a different job.
You're right.
So he comes to us and
Your
the clerk says, "Hey, my
restaurant, your
wife doesn't want me to."
hospitality, you're
Yeah.
in a couple of
So the whole hospitality
segments.
industry, struggle
Yeah.
with that issue because
Yeah.
so they had to find another way to keep them happy. And so they say, well,
Yeah.
let's see,
Yeah.
how would you like for us to? So you're gonna have a free dinner. So you have
There
well,
you go.
try to find different ways
Yes.
of giving them benefits
Yes.
that you can afford,
Mhm.
but makes them happy.
Absolutely.
So happiness is a big new thing.
Yep.
And happiness has now been redefined. Happiness
Yes.
before was like a bonus. Happiness before was like another dollar or
It's
hour.
not as much money as it used to be.
Yeah.
Everything was the money.
Yeah. So now it's
Yeah.
like, well, let me have more time off. Now
There
let
you
me,
go.
my wife and I, you want to give us a vacation? So anyway, that's how we
Yes.
kind of live through this
Yeah.
transition. We're still going through.
Yeah.
We're not out of the woods yet.
Do you have a prediction of when you might be back to regular? After how many years?
Well, since 2020. yeah.
Hopefully, maybe 2 more years, maybe. Who knows, huh?
Yeah, that's a.
It's
that's
hard
a
to
good-
predict. I don't
Yeah.
want to put you on
So
the
yeah.
spot.
Well, I don't want to give you a bad answer.
Yeah.
It's going to take. It will take some time. And to be
Yeah.
honest, I hate to say this, but this election's going to make a difference. I really think.
Yes, yes,
If they raise taxes, that's going to be a problem. That's going to.
yes.
If they make it more difficult for you to
Comply with regulations.
comply with regulations, because the hospitality industry is so vulnerable to regulations.
Yes,
Like I said, when they came in and said you have to social distance, you have to be 6 feet away, they added to it, your chairs have to be 6 feet away.
yeah,
We can't allow you to be sitting close. Well, in our industry, that meant you lower your number of chairs,
Right.
so my occupancy.
yes.
So I had 60 occupants in our one
Yeah.
dining room. I had to take it to 20. So you do that kind of stuff. So just a little health department ruling
Yes.
can cut your occupancy in a third.
But
That kind of stuff is what, if you have more of that,
yes.
you have more
Yeah.
slower recovery.
And someone who's always suspicious of government and regulations, although God bless them for a lot of other things, they kind of learned, well, if we could do that during COVID, maybe we could start doing this or that. It gave regulators and big power government thoughts about political stuff that maybe they could start doing. And I'm very suspicious. Although, again, and I think we talked about it, getting through the COVID thing, and a lot of stuff was uncovered after it. And if big government didn't do the way they did, was shoveling out the money, which now is a huge reason why we have inflation.
Inflation, yes, that's right.
Wage inflation, and the way immigration now has changed, and the workarounds that individual states did to accommodate all these people up north that were so proud that they were sanctuary cities. I better shut up because this was about you. But I'm going to get into some of these things with my partner Tom. Let's see how many minutes we're at here. This is a good one. We're around 45 or so.
Oh my gosh.
And we only got
we
through
just got
a couple of topics. I've suggested, because Mark has some wonderful stories about his family and his father and his grandfather and so forth, and his Quaker religion. And Quaker's considered a religion.
I would say they're
You
definitely.
think so?
Yeah. Like you say, Presbyterians, Methodists, Quakers.
It's a sect of.
Everybody's got a founder,
kind of
somebody who had some.
It's a Christian based. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I got in trouble once because.
You got in trouble? How can that happen?
Oh, I'll tell you the story some other time.
I'll get you on this. Interview you.
Oh,
we're gonna interview you.
Yeah, I got a million things here. I just got to find people who are willing to be filmed and want to do these YouTube shows. Which is my new endeavor now. Anyway, our wives are out shopping. We're gonna have to get connected with perhaps another lunch or meal before you guys have to leave today. And you're going to be driving back to what town?
Well, we're in East Windsor.
East Windsor, and he still does consulting legal work, and that's an interesting field too. We better cut it short. Mark, thanks very much for being with Doug's Interesting People. Now, on YouTube, where you're watching this, and the audio interviews, I say go to Spotify. Go to YouTube.
By the way, I don't think you get my last name. It's Mark Bell.
Bell.
That's right.
Yes.
If you want to look up Scenic View Restaurant, they can see in Indiana where our little enterprise is. So it's under Scenic View.
Okay. Is it Google Scenic View?
And I think
in Indiana, perhaps.
Or Indiana or Bloomington, the town.
Bloomington, Indiana.
Because there's not apparently Scenic View in Colorado, so you don't want to go to that if you want to see ours.
We ran into other breezy points.
So,
my wife has been there. Southern Indiana, near Bloomington, Indiana, is heaven. And I've gotten to know these people. What, have I known you for a day now? We've had a lot of conversations. It's got to be a wonderful place. And you can get a meal there, and I hear the pizza is fabulous. So thank you, Mark Bell. And it's been a pleasure.
We'll look forward to the next one.
Okay.